Want to play chess online or learn how to improve? Join us at the #1 chess destination in the world, chess.com. With hundreds of thousands of people playing at any moment, you'll quickly find a game with someone at your level, whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster. You can play games at any pace against friends, other members, or one of our many computer personalities. Chess.com makes improving fun and easy. Sharpen your game with tactics puzzles and enhance your strategy with our videos and lessons by top masters. Learn from your own games with Chess.com's easy-to-use analysis tool. Regardless of your skill level, Chess.com has all you need to take your game to the next level. Chess.com is your go-to source for chess news, live coverage of tournaments, events, and everything in between. Experience Chess.com anytime and anywhere, whether you're at home on your computer or on the go with our mobile apps. Signing up is free and easy, so what are you waiting for? Join Chess.com today.
Welcome back at FIDE Grand Prix 2022, and today we do have Tiebreaks. I'm women Grandmaster Tsatsalashvili, and this is Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. Dania, we do have not only one, but two tiebreaks today. How do you feel?
Hi, Ketty. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. I feel great. We're going to have a different time control today and, two different sets of tiebreakers. I think they're going to be very evenly matched. It's very hard to say who among these players is a better rapid player. So I think we're in for a very close tiebreaker. There's a lot at stake, and that's everything that we can ask for out of a day of chess.
Absolutely. Looking forward to see the upcoming tiebreakers. We do have short time, but before that, let's go back in round 6, recap, and see what happened here, Dania.
Yeah, well, these alliterations are great. We had Wojciech wobbles. He had a just dominant position against Grigory Aparin, failed to convert it, and now he's got to prove his mettle in a tiebreaker today. Hikaru holds on an absolutely improbable game against Yesipenko, where Hikaru is dead in the water, but don't shovel dirt on him yet. Hikaru manages to survive, and he wins his group and moves on. And so unfortunate, Wesley jumping out to an amazing position against Hare Krishna. He had chances to win the game. There was nothing very direct, but he was much better. But Pentala really, he put together a very impressive defensive effort. He found counterplay. Then Wesley was the one who had to bail out into a draw. And Wesley is another one of those unfortunate players who has to prove himself in today's tiebreaker against Lenier Dominguez, who, after a loss to Wesley, wins 2 amazing games. And he's going to be very happy to make it into the tiebreaker, Ketty. Wesley, not so much.
Yeah, that's right. He's not very happy today. But anyway, he has to fight, and he has really positive results against Dominguez. So he's ready to fight. And let's take a look once again at our cross table here. Nakamura, after yesterday's game, at the interview, when interviewer said, have you seen knight b6 move there? We all remember this move. He took a pause for a moment. It's okay, yeah, computers. So it was very computer-like move, but
I did see knight b6, but with that being said, I do think that everybody's following me on the computer, isn't always aware, of how hard it is to find the moves. But yeah, we're definitely giving Hikaru flack, but the way that he recovered there is unreal. Only Hikaru can do that. Even Magnus, I think, doesn't have exactly that set of defensive qualities that Hikaru does. He draws positions where literally most GMs would actually just resign flat out. It was pretty impressive stuff. And of course, Levon Aronian, he wins by a country mile, and forcing a quick draw yesterday against Dubov. He's gonna have a pretty extended break, and he's gonna come in with fresh legs and a fresh mind into tomorrow's game.
Mm-hmm. What about tiebreaks? Let's bring that on the screen. What it actually means. We can have rapid games, 2 rapid games.
Ooh.
Players gonna have only 15 minutes with 10-second increment. This is such a switch from standard time control to rapid game. And you know what? If the match is tied 1-1, then we're going to have even shorter time control, 3+2. And guess what? If this is also tied, then we're going to have Armageddon game, which is so exciting to see. Also, not very often happening, where when one side has 5 minutes and the other side, black, has 4 minutes. But in that case, black has 2 results, draw and victory, just favors black. So this might be coming to us. Any of this stage or all of this stage gonna be, but we're starting with 2 rapid games, Daniel.
Indeed, Ketty, we are. And I love the fact that it's 15 plus 10. You know, I like that more than 25-minute games. So it's going to be very fast paced. And we'll, you know, as the games start up, we'll delve into the details of who are the slight favorites in the rapid games, because we can't really talk about heavy favorites. Everybody here is so strong. But we've got 2. And that's why these matchups are interesting. It wouldn't be interesting if one of the players was significantly better than the other. So I would give this a non-zero chance of reaching an Armageddon. I think, you know, it's possible that we're going to see one of the matches just have a bunch of draws. And this is going to be absolutely fascinating, precisely because so much is on the line. I mean, at the end of this, there are candidate spots. And you know what happens at the end of the candidates? Well, that's a world championship spot. So these players are going to be under a lot of pressure to perform today.
And today, a lot of people are speculating in our chat too, also ourselves, who's going to win, and people were voting all over the platforms, Daniel.
Indeed. Make sure to not forget to vote. Don't procrastinate, because voting ends on the 10th move. So just navigate to chess.com/events, go to the tournament, select a game, click vote, and guess the results. But again, voting ends after 10th move. This is a rapid game, so do it now in our next break, because you could be eligible for tons of prizes.
Yes. And it's the time to take our break. We're coming back right before the first moves of our tie breaks. See you soon. Welcome back at FIDE Grand Prix, first tiebreaker here. Katie and Dania are the back, and we are about to have our first move just 1 minute before the start of the games. Dania, what are we expecting today?
Well, we have two matchups today. We have Radoslav Wojtaszek against Richard Rapport, and we have the Americans, Lenier Dominguez and Wesley So. They have faced each other in so many U.S. championships. I faced both of them in the last U.S. championship, so I know a lot about Lenier and Wesley, a little bit less about Radoslav and Richard's rapid play. Obviously, there is a rating difference in Wojtaszek Rapport. So I think on paper, Richard should be the favorite. And, you know, what's going to be very important for Radoslav, I think, given his play this tournament, is to pounce when he's got the initiative. I think he's gotten great positions out of the opening, but he's really struggled to convert those into full points, and he's shied away from complications. And in rapid in particular, it's absolutely critical to exploit your chances and to put problems in front of your opponent, given the limited time. And especially against someone like Rapport, whom you cannot hand the initiative, as he demonstrated yesterday against Fedoseev. You know, once he gets in charge of the game, he's a force to be reckoned with.
Radoslav Wojtaszek has missed so many chances that he could win his group according to the advantages and the games he had. I'm so happy that you brought that, Dania. I do have a little paper over here where I wrote down the results between these two players, because when I thought Richard Rapport is the absolute favorite in this match, as his rating now is 27.79 and Wojtaszek is 27.02. But what I have seen, and I'm going to read it out now, is that actually Radoslav Wojtaszek is leading the match with 3 points in classical game, 3-0.
Wow.
Richard Rapport has never won against Radoslav Wojtaszek in classical game. They have made 5 draws. And looking at the rapid games in this format, Wojtaszek again leads with 3-1 and 5 draws again. So I was so surprised to see these results and statistics. Wow. And then I completely switched my mindset and that, like, oh, maybe Radoslav is the favorite in this match.
Yeah, that's great to know. And, you know, they do that with basketball and other games where sometimes one team has another team's number, and sometimes, you know, a player can just plays very badly against somebody else. Now, you might ask, well, why does that happen? Well, that can happen for a variety of reasons, right? It can be psychological. You can be in someone's head, and it can be stylistic. I mean, Radoslav has a very sound positional style. And, you know, Richard has this very dynamic, flamboyant, fiery way of playing. And that just doesn't always work against someone like Radoslav, who's very, very technical and normally good at punishing mistakes, maybe not so much this tournament. And, you know, as we wait for their first moves to come in, you know, the other matchup, Wesley against Dominguez, my guess would be they're probably a lot closer in rapid and classical. I don't know how many times they've played, but it's probably, you know, probably at this point, well over 10. And they have actually quite similar styles, I think. And we'll delve a little bit more into that when we switch over to their game. But let's, you know, we might as well start at the Wojtaszek Rapport game.
Yeah, in this case, they have played few classical games, and Wesley So is leading with 2-1, and they have made 7 draws, quite a lot of draws, but they have played even more rapid games. And in this case, Wesley So is leading with 17-11, and they have made 25 draws. Also, the number of draws, 25 in rapid, might hint us that we can see this match going to the blitz format.
Yeah, no, and the reason they make a lot of draws is really because they're so close in strength. I don't think it's because, you know, they don't take risks. I think a lot of it is because they're just good at chess. I mean, they just don't make a lot of mistakes. And Lenier in particular is someone who I'm so impressed with, because he's not old, Katie. How do I put this delicately? But he's older, and he has maintained an incredible strength and speed. in Rapid and Blitz. So I'm a big Lenier fan, and it's great to see him, keep up through the years with the top guys.
It's a important topic. Earlier, before the live, we had this conversation of the age. We had this conversation of the age, and in chess, Dania, how we have seen Aronian being in the best shape at this age, and against 39. Against a young player, he just catch them in the openings or outplays in the end game. Do you think the years bring you more experience and more confidence in chess?
Experience and confidence, and sometimes I read that having a family can actually help, and it gives you some grounding. And I read a couple of interviews. I read an interview with Hikaru, with Kramnik, and in particular, I remember Kramnik said something about losing your fear of losing as you get older. Maybe your calculation slows down just a smidge, just a little bit. Although if you keep yourself in good physical form, I mean, in my opinion, chess players and chess fans tend to greatly overestimate the impact of age. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll see when I'm 40. But if you're in good physical form when you're 40, I mean, Tom Brady is playing football. I guess he retired, but he's in his mid 40s. You can play chess when you're 39 and you can keep the highest level. Victor Korchnoi has proven that beyond a shadow of doubt. And the other thing is that you play so much, you go through so many ups and downs, Ketty, that you're just you don't get as high with the highs and as low with the lows. And that kind of psychological, when you're this centered, and you're not this impacted by any individual result, you just start playing more freely. You just start, playing your true style. And all of this really, really helps. When you're younger, you still have a lot more to prove, and that can negatively impact an individual performance. And
agree with that. Yes.
We know that it's a couple of minutes after the stated start time of the round. We don't have moves yet, but we are working on it. So we will have moves for you as soon as they come in. We're working on it very diligently. So please be patient. The games should start any second.
Yes, the games are gonna start in any second, and the players right now are in Berlin. But Dania, we do have less and less players after this day. After these tiebreakers, we are going to have only 4 players out of 16. Wow. So we're gonna have less games to say less. I cannot say less fun, because I'm sure those remaining games will be super interesting. But we have to say goodbye to many players, at least until next time, because next legs, second and third legs are just on the way this month and the next month.
That's true, but I have to say, Ketty, as I've gotten more experience at commentating, I actually kind of enjoy commentating situations where there are only two games or even one game, because it essentially guarantees that you're not going to miss any action. And, when I first started commentating, I was actually really bad at, I wanted to be so thorough that I would often miss the action on the other boards. And, people in the chat and the fans would get rightfully mad. Like, as a commentator, your job is to switch to wherever game the action is at. And I feel like when there are only 2 games, it allows everybody to really enjoy themselves, and really pick out all of the subtleties of the game. But I think we've got some moves. So let's switch on over to our 2 rapid games. Here we go. This is So Dominguez, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah. So this is Wesley against Dominguez. They've made 13 moves and nothing major has happened other than a queen trade. This is a queen's gambit accepted.
Danny, I thought it was some error of pigeon boards, because I was, where's the queen? But queen can be traded.
Where are the rooks?
But where are the rooks?
Well, they traded everything. Let me just really quickly show how that happened. I mean, queen's gambit accepted. There's the queen trade. There's the rook trade. This is a very well-known line, and it's a very symmetrical position where, white is a slightly more pleasant position. And the reason why is because black has a very hard time developing this bishop. Now, you might say, well, what about the fianchetto? But the problem is that if black plays b5, white's immediately going to beat black to the punch by putting his bishop on f3 and then maybe even the knight to c6. So black has a couple of specific problems to solve here.
Even the queen is out of the board and the rook, this might still be an issue for black because of the light square bishop, and Dominguez has to take care of that. Daniel, we also got the games on the second board. Maybe we can take a very quick look at that.
Yeah, and this is a slightly more unbalanced position. This was a King's Indian fianchetto variation. Ooh, I love it. I love King's Indians. C6, Queen B6. Yep, that's a... Oh, and Queen A6 and B5. I used to play this line with black, actually, full time. So this is a really cool system. Not a lot of people probably know about it. It looks very weird, but black is going directly after the C pawn, knight D2, knight takes C4, bishop B7, and you get this very kind of unbalanced structure where, yeah, it looks like white is better, but boom, D5 striking in the center, knight E5, and D takes E4, knight takes E4. So we also, Keddy, might have a lot of trades here in the center. Knight takes E4, bishop takes E4. And I think what Richard is going to go for here, I cannot draw this arrow, jeez. And bishop takes C4. I think Richard is going to try to go rook C8 and then push the C pawn, essentially freeing himself from his only big weakness in the position.
And what about the queen on A6? Is that a good square for the black queen?
Well, it's not bad, because the queen is defending C6. It's also protecting the bishop, which makes C5 a lot easier. And it's not so easy to attack. I mean, I guess white can play bishop D3, but then the queen can just hide on B6 and then on C7. So it's quite an underrated square for the queen.
They're actually starting to play so fast, and it's not easy to make this kind of decision. To me, it seems like they are well prepared for the tiebreakers.
Yeah, no, they all came with openings that they knew they wanted to play. I mean, Richard choosing the King's Indian, which is a great opening period, and nobody in the chat is allowed to say otherwise as long as I'm commentating. But it's also a great rapid opening because it's so dynamic, and it's just even dubious lines within the King's Indian are not easy to refute. Rapport is taking his time here. So he's probably deciding, does he play rook AC8 or does he start by taking the knight on E5, which has the downside of, that pawn on E5 is going to be quite annoying. So that's why I thought he would go rook AC8.
Right, and the idea here clearly is to push this pawn forward C5 and try to just get rid of the weakness, right? So from C6. And if this is out of the board, black has nothing to worry at all.
Yeah, I mean, and the question is, can you do it immediately? Well, I don't think you can. You lose a pawn here. Bishop B7, Queen B7, Knight D7, Queen D7. Yeah, technically H3 is hanging, but the problem, I guess, isn't that black loses a pawn because he doesn't. It's that you give white this massive passer that's already on C6 before you even blink. I guess not C6 immediately. You should start by centralizing the queen, preventing the rook lift. So this is a bad position for black. And so Richard has to be very patient here. But if you play rook AC8, then you're ready to play C5. And there he is, yep. Rook AC8. So maybe Radoslav goes for C1. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the moment where he spent most of his time, and he's down to 10 minutes. Radoslav has 13 minutes in here. For now, it might not say too much, but soon time advantage can be decisive because they have only 10 seconds increment, not more than that.
Yeah, it really can be decisive. I mean, if you take one long think, you think for 5-6 minutes, boom, you're down below 5 minutes. You're basically playing blitz. So time management in a rapid game is actually incredibly difficult to do effectively. You also can't play bullet from the start because it's not blitz, it's rapid. So you have to find a happy medium. And okay, Radoslav can play rook AC1 here and try to keep discouraging C5. The point here is that you can't take on A2 because now the rook returns to A1 and traps the queen. Or you can take the knight on D7. But if Richard plays C5 in the right circumstances, then he solves all of his opening problems. So that's going to be the question. Does black get a chance to play C5 here, or can Radoslav, keep Richard saddled with this weakness?
That's what Wojtaszek would try now, and he will spend some time here to stop C5 coming forward. Shall we go to the other game? Yes. As Dominguez have solved the problem of light square bishop, and seems
there
like
he
is okay.
He's managed to fianchetto. He's still just a little bit worse because this bishop, yeah, he's fianchettoed it, but now it's biting on granite, as is the knight on F6, which is totally restricted as Hess likes to point out, by the pawn that's two squares between the pawn and the knight. And that pawn is controlling both of the knight's advancing squares. Yeah. So maybe you go knight c5 here and offer a bunch of trades. I think that's a pretty good bet. No, of course this is equal. I mean, let's be real. Black isn't actually worse here, but if I had to choose a side, I would definitely choose white. Also, there's this pawn on b6, which is a little bit tender. So Lenier has to be, I wouldn't even say precise, but a little bit careful the next couple of moves. Maybe also b5, but that gives up the a5 square. So that's an example of something where, bishop a8, and now white starts playing a4, and black's queen side gets under fire. So you have to be disciplined, I'll put it that way.
Dominguez here thoughts a little bit more time than Wesley So, and he's going for knight c5 trades. I bet trades are good for black, and if he gets into endgame where he has only one piece, that can be a safe path for black.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you can get a trade of rooks in, that's basically an instant draw. Just because black has no real targets and white can't progress. I mean, the b6 pawn can be defended by the other knight from d7. I wouldn't even consider this a weakness. And I don't see how Wesley decline. I mean, I guess Wesley could go knight d4 here and keep pieces on the board, but that leaves the knight on a very nice square. So this is, heading toward a draw at a furious rate, which is, of course, a great result for Lenier, who's a beast with the white pieces.
I mean, this is his strategy for today in this match, to be very solid with black and then to have white pieces and to use that. What do you think, Daniel?
Oh, absolutely. That's a strategy. And that's also always a strategy. I think even in classical chess, Lenier is super. He can play the knight off with black, but he also knows how to be solid. He has the Berlin in his repertoire. And against d4, he's just incredibly hard to beat. His Queen's Gambit declined and accepted. He plays both of those. I mean, he knows them to a T. And we'll see whether Wesley can generate any kind of life here, but I'm quite skeptical. Maybe we should switch to the other game. In the meantime, Radoslav is taking a very long think after rook a8. He still hasn't made a move, but let's see what he ends up doing.
Yeah, he feels that this is the critical moment for him, because if black pushes c5, then, as we have mentioned, will be a really good position for black. Is there any way that this pawn pushing can be stopped? Like, for instance, knight d3 maybe?
I thought about that. I think knight d3 is a pretty serious candidate move, but I think black can still play c5, which is annoying Radoslav right now, because takes c5, and after bishop takes b2, well, white has to take this bishop, right? But whichever piece you take with, you relinquish one of the defenders of c5, and this is a draw. Takes, and I mean, lots of pieces have been traded, and neither side really can contend for anything. So I think if Radoslav doesn't find anything else, knight d3 is very possible. But I would say that rook ac1 is really the only shot at preventing c5 realistically.
He's spending so much time, Dania. He's really
this is dangerous, Ketty. This is he's entering pretty disturbing territory here. He's got 8 minutes on the clock. Ugh.
Yeah, and also sometimes you can't really make a most best choice out of the candidate moves you have. So Radoslav should make any move right now, and maybe just face the fact that he cannot really stop his pawn coming forward.
Maybe b4. This is another try, but
that's crazy.
But what's amazing? Black can still play c5. That's hilarious. Knight d7, rook d7, and okay, bishop b7, queen b7, and if bc, then you lose the d pawn. Oh, my arrow drawing today is atrocious. And if dc, then you lose the b pawn and probably also the c pawn. So Radoslav going not rook c1, but rook d1, rook f d1.
Rook f d1, yes.
And I think c5 is possible here.
The idea of rook f d1 is to target the d7 knight, or just to fight for this file?
Well, that's a great question. So let's say c5 takes. Maybe Radoslav wants to take. But, actually, there's the move c takes d4 here. Intermezzo, discovering the attack on the queen. But even after the simple rook takes d7, dc, bishop b2, queen b2. Now, it's very important not to take on d1 because you're going to get checkmated at the end on d8. But after rook takes c5, black has solved all of his problems. So Radoslav, I think he was trying to figure out whether it's even worth trying to stop c5. And I think he's concluded that, you can't stop c5. So the best thing to do is to prepare for it. And there's c5, Richard not hesitating at all.
c5 is right there, and maybe white has to take first the bishop on b7 to be the accurate, and not to allow c takes d for intermediate move, and then to take on d7 and c5, just to have that endgame.
It looks like both games are heading toward a draw. I mean, Radoslav can keep the knights on the board. He can play knight back to c4. The engine is indicating this move, but I don't think he's going to do that. And yeah, there's knight takes d7. I actually think we're going to see rook takes d7, dc. We're going to see the bishop trade, rook takes c5, and that's a position with some life left. I mean, it's not a dead draw, but it's totally balanced. So
yeah, very, very interesting situation. If black takes c takes d4, can white still go for knight c5 here?
Yeah, he has to, and this leads to a lot of complications. I think Richard is going to be calculating these. Queen b6. Now white has to defend the knight. But if white does it this way, black has the brilliant move d3. Boom. And the point is that after rook takes, well, the knight is pinned. You can't take. And if you take with a queen, then black takes the bishop on b2. And if you take on g7 first, the rook drops back to d5. And black is attacking two pieces at the same time. Even if he wasn't, the knight can't be defended at all. So in this position, white has to find the counterintuitive bishop a3, and then black plays d3. So this leads to a completely crazy position, which of course the engine evaluates as 0.00. But this is right up Richard's alley. If he wants to make a serious play at winning this game, he's got a shot to do so with the move c takes d4. So let's see what he chooses.
Yeah, he's taking his time right now. He's thinking about 2 minutes. Shall we go to the other game, as we do have a bit of changes there, and Wesley is playing very ambitious moves. He traded all the pieces on c5, and then he pushed knight a4, attacking rook and the b6 pawn, and now b4.
b4 trying to get b5 and there's knight d7. We talked about that move, king e1. The problem is if you play b5, there's the tricky move, rook c2. And you can't really take on a6. You get yourself in a lot of trouble because of the pin. So Wesley, preliminarily on pinning himself, king e1. The other idea is now rook c2 is met with king d1, and the rook cannot stay on the second rank. But again, I don't think there are any threats anymore. I think Leniar can just go king e7, for instance, just make some small improvements to his position. And he's got everything pretty nicely protected. King e7, rook c7, just kind of chill. And ask Wesley how he's going to make any progress here whatsoever.
The thing is that the rook on c5 is so active, and now Wesley has to fight for the file, and he plays king e1 with the idea to play king d2 and probably rook c1. And all this started by very ambitious approach of Wesley pushing b4. He could just wait a bit, but let's see what Wesley has here. In this position, any ideas that he can start kingside pawn pushes?
Yeah, maybe you can throw in like h4, but the issue is, well, where are you going from there? h4, black will play h5. So both sides can, as my old coach used to say, finish architectural design on the king side, just artistic, just make it all look nice. Hang the curtains and the paintings, but ultimately, black has no weaknesses on the king side, so it's going to be very hard to manufacture anything kind of out of thin air.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the first game with black pieces, you can't really ask more than this position, right? It's just fine. It's just fine.
Maybe b5, but then takes and rook c2. And again, only white is asking for trouble. I think, Katie, you were right. I think king d2 has happened, and Wesley's going to play rook c1 and basically offer a draw. So.
What do you think, Dan? Is it hard for players to switch from classical games? Like, they have played already 6 games, and their mindset is pretty much adjusted to that time control. And today they have to play so fast. Do you think they have some troubles with this, or they don't really have it?
So, by the way, I'm going to switch to the other game here. Radosław has played rook AC1, and looks like he's missed the move bishop H6 here. But to answer your question, Ketty, I think the answer used to be yes, but now there's a lot of these tournaments now with mixed time controls. Like there's rapid and blitz and classical and rapid. And in Norway chess, you had literally like a rapid game at the end of the classical game if the game ended in a draw. And these players, they play so much online that I think they've gotten more used to just switching time controls at a moment's notice. So I think that it's not a problem for them anymore.
I see. All right, what about this position, Daniel? You pointed bishop H6. So with this, Black is pushing the rook backwards because White doesn't really want to push F4. That's so ugly looking move.
He played a different move that's also nasty, which is Queen F3. And the purpose of this move is to prevent D takes E5. Well, how does it prevent DC5? Because after rook takes D1, rook takes D1, bishop takes B2, the queen is overloaded. It can't take the bishop because you lose the rook. So Radosław has to keep the tension, but Black seems to be better prepared for this tension than White. This queen is right in White's grill. You probably have to move the rook from D1 maybe to E1. And if bishop takes D4, bishop takes D4. And now if pawn takes, then of course you lose the rook. And if rook takes, White takes on E7. So it's quite important for Radosław, I think, to find the move rook E1 in this position.
Can Black still go with bishop H6 here after rook E1?
Yeah, definitely. But now rook CD1. And again, what hurts Richard is that that rook on C8 is undefended, which gives White a little bit more freedom to move his rooks around. This is very unclear. I mean, rook CD8 is possible in this position, actually giving up C5. And oh my goodness, there's a crazy move in this position, Kenny. Bishop E3. Oh, are you kidding me? The point is rook takes E3, you drop the rook, and F takes E3, you create decisive weakness of the king. And if you don't do either of those, then at the very least, Black has queen takes G3 anyway. Beautiful resource. But this is going to remain behind the scenes because Radosław has gone
crazy. That's crazy move. Bishop E3.
I'm gonna give this to a student today as a warm up. That's a beautiful move. Now bishop A1 is a sign that Radosław is just sort of biding his time. And here comes the H pawn. Richard is now threatening H4, which is going to create big weaknesses in White's king side. Ooh, White, all of a sudden, White's the one who has to be careful here, no doubt about it.
Just imagine you have to play here with White bishop from B to A1, which creates nothing. And it also shows like, what's White's next plan? You're just waiting. So we can also think from this perspective. I think Radosław feels not very comfortable in this position.
No, and if I rewind two moves, essentially, Radosław knew that D takes E5 is an instant draw. And he actually played for a win here. I think Radosław underestimated the power of that queen on F3. And now he's down below 4 minutes. You know, he's got a pretty unpleasant position, and he's definitely kicking himself right about now for not just taking the draw, you know, with D takes C5. And if you take now, then there's rook takes C5. I think that's what he missed. And well, if you play queen c5, you lose the bishop at the end of the line.
Guess what? This bishop is so bad on it. It's going to be lost in the end. He goes with queen d3. He hopes to get into the end game. And I think at this point, with so low time on the clock, he has 3 minutes and Report has 6 minutes. He would be okay to make a draw now already.
Oh, Radosław would totally take a draw right now. So here there's a choice for Richard. Does he trade queens and then try to keep attacking the d4 pawn, or does he play queen d5 and keep the tension, keep the queens on the board? Well, I could see a case being made for both. I think he's going to take a little while here. Let's quickly check into our other game. Yeah, they've traded rooks, and there really isn't much to see here. I think there's a 99% chance that this game ends in a draw.
Not any single weakness here for Black that White can, go and press. B6 can be a weakness, but now it's well guarded by the knight. Bishop c6 can kick this knight back, or b5 can also kick the knight back. You just need to activate the king and just to go and decide wherever White king goes, just to have an opposition.
Yeah, and probably in such positions, you often see the move g5 as a way of slowing down white's kingside pawns. But even this is not strictly necessary. Lenier might play it just as a, just as a way to improve. He's taking some time here, just trying to, I think, figure out the best setup for his king. You don't want to get too low on time, but we don't really have to follow this game for the next couple of moves unless something crazy happens. So let's switch back to the report game, where Richard has indeed traded queens, but that doesn't mean he's relinquishing his hopes of an advantage.
Okay, what can be now? His next move is he going to push e5, d5, e4.
Well, d5 is forced here, otherwise you lose the pawn. d5, e4, that's a great idea. Rook back, I guess, but not rook d2, because now bishop h6. There's a lot of tricks here. Rook d1 is forced. Bishop a1, rook a1, rook cd8, and white loses this pawn. No, this is very unpleasant in a rapid game, which is essentially now a blitz game. Even though it's a draw, obviously objectively it should be a draw. This is quite an unpleasant endgame to defend. So Richard has quite a choice here. He can play e5. He can also centralize his rook with rook d5 and prepare to double on the d file. You don't want to double on the d file immediately, because then white can play rook takes c5.
Yeah, and it trades this c to d pawn. What should not be really hard for white to hold the position. He goes with h4. He wants to weaken the king side. He still reserves this e5 chances, and obviously white don't want to take that pawn on h4, right?
Probably not. Although if you play g4, the point is that these dark squares become even weaker. And later on, if you think about a rook endgame, you think about, g4, the pawn on h3 is a potential target for a black rook that appears on the third rank. And I know that's way in the future, but that's how you have to think in endgames. You can't do everything for the immediate future. You also have to create long-term weaknesses that can be exploited later. Also, very good practical move, because it forces Radek to make a decision. And guess what a decision requires? It requires time. He's now under 3 minutes. Buckle your seatbelts. Like, Tasha gets to be very cautious here.
In the previous rounds, Oparin played h5, h4. He wanted to start the attack, and Radislav just took like here in that game, and all the kind of attack was just killed by that move, and he takes this pawn here as well. Report goes very quickly, rook d5. So he wanted to have these weaknesses, right? It's better for black to have this kind of pawn structure.
Yeah, the structure's terrible, and in a pawn endgame, that could really hurt white. In a rook endgame, it's a little bit less important that your structure is bad. But Radislav going b4. What a move. Now c4, I think, is forced. Oh, and then he maybe wants to go rook a3 and go after the a7 pawn. But man, that gives black a pretty powerful passer. Let's see what Richard does here. I mean, I don't see an alternative to c4. Yep, c4, rook a3. But if bishop takes d4 here, then we have a trade. White takes on a7, and black can try to push the c pawn. You're going to get a situation where white's up a bunch of pawns, but black has the best pawn. So I don't know who prevails there. Maybe also just rook c7, just defend the a7 pawn.
7 looks good looking move, and then to capture d4 right away.
Yeah, rook c7 looks like the best move here.
We're waiting the move from Richard Rapport, who has 4 minutes. He has very good, comfortable time on the clock. He's controlling that really well, but still thinking for his next move.
Yeah, he's done a great job with his time management. That's right. And big moment here. Big moment. He's deciding whether to take on d4, and he does take on d4. Okay. Not approved of entirely by the engine, but I think this is also a good practical attempt.
Dania, white should not go rook d1 to pin this bishop, because it loses rook to bishop f2, bishop f2. And for this reason, white really quickly played bishop takes, rook takes, and very likely white will take a7 pawn as well to hit
Yeah.
e7.
And then white can take e7, and after c2, drop the rook back to e1 just in time to prevent, of course, rook d1 check, which will be the threat. And it appears that black can't really make too much progress there, and white can use his a pawn in order to distract black's rook. The key is going to be to win the c pawn. If white can even give up 3 of his pawns for that c pawn, it's going to be a draw. So, okay, Radoslav, big moment here. He's thinking he's got 2 minutes on the clock. He has to find rook takes c7. King f1 apparently also draws, but those are the only 2 drawing moves. Everything else loses. And I don't really see what else you can even try to do here.
Rook a3 loses to c2. As black's idea is also to push c2 and rook d1. Here we have rook e7 by Radoslav Wojtaszek. Richard pushed c2 right away, and rook e1 also looks only move here for white.
Yeah, rook e1. You can even play king f1 here and then meet rook d1 check with rook e1. No, I think after rook e1, the game is going to end in a draw because he did play king f1 actually.
King f1,
now rook e2, and the key is that after rook b1, rook e1, anytime the rooks are traded, look at how close white's king is to the c pawn, and that's really what hurts black. A rook trade is definitely in white's favor. But still, 1.5 minutes. It's not over yet.
White is thinking, and rook e2 seems straightforward move, right? Rook e2, king e2, he goes king e2.
So Richard can start collecting. He can collect the h pawn and then go back and collect the a pawn. And what Radoslav is saying is, okay, I'm going to give up both of these pawns, or maybe he won't give up the a pawn. Maybe he'll play a3 at some point. For instance, rook takes h4. He wants to go rook back to e3, and then he wants to play a3, just defending right in time. Yeah, this makes some sense. It's still a draw. It's just maybe not the most accurate move.
Yeah, the h4 pawn is gone and rook is on e3. White to move. In the other game, Daniel, the things are getting so sharp. Look at these white pawns on the 4th rank, and black managed to get the knight on d4.
Yeah, Lanier somehow working some magic, and he went b5, actually. That's a pretty committal decision, but the point is to create, as you said, this stronghold on d4. And I think, honestly, that although things do look a little bit sharper than they were, I still think it's a dead draw. I think Wesley is likely to play knight e2 at some point. And after the trade of knights, okay, Dominguez could go g5 and just close down the position completely. And at this point, there's nothing left to play for. So I still think the likeliest result by far is a draw. But we'll keep an eye on this one if anything happens. Back in the other game, no, this is also heading for a draw. I don't think Richard has any way to make progress here. He's going to have to bring his rook back to c4. And that essentially means that he can't, that there's not much that he can do here.
And white can push e4 just to assume. Oh, not here. Look at this, Dania. If after rook c4, white takes push the pawn e4, black takes that pawn, and if you take on c2 twice, then rook a2, rook f2, you lose this f2 pawn, and I don't know. There's g and f against h. Black can play this forever.
Oh yeah, GNF against H is like basically losing, I think, in a practical game. But yeah, there's pitfalls. There's pitfalls. King d2 has been played. Richard is taking his time here. I mean, he can also go rook f4 and hit the f pawn. Yeah, he just did. But Radoslav can go back and forth, king e2, and then the moment the rook leaves the f file, you go back to d2. It's just one of those things. The c2 pawn is too weak to be left unattended. Black has to keep a rook on it at all times, and that really limits black's ability to generate winning chances here.
And if white keeps the king e2, king d2, and rook on e3, the pawns on the 3rd rank, is there a way black can improve the king's position and change the evaluation?
Yeah, maybe try to get the king to h4 to put additional strain on white's position, just pressure the h3 pawn. And then the rook on e3 is doing a lot at the same time. It's going to be guarding h3, it's guarding a3. it's guarding the king from various checks. So Black, I guess, does have ways to improve his position. Radislav, though, down to a minute on the clock. So if Richard can find any way to complicate the game and complicate White's defensive task, it's going to be real scary for Radislav.
It's going to be really, really scary here. Down to 1 minute. It's only 10 seconds increment. You know, when you have a position where you have to think to avoid the opponent's threats, 10 seconds is not really much to have.
No. And F3 was played. That surprises me a little bit. Rook C4, Rook B3. Yeah, he wants to go. I think Radislav wants to force a draw. He wants to go Rook B2 and then Rook takes C2. Richard going Rook back to C5. So what happens after Rook B2? I'm not sure. Oh, Rook B2, maybe Rook D5 check. And then Rook E8 check. Oh, and the king has to walk back, but now Rook D2 check and Rook E2. No, this is
I don't like that.
This is unpleasant. White can't force the draw. White has to be patient. A4, good move. Radislav sending his pawn forward, trying potentially to distract Black's rook. But what about King H6 now? What if Richard starts to advance his king at this point?
But Danny, I love this Rook C5 move. Just waiting move, so sneaky move. Like you go for C2 pawn, and I'm gonna get my both rooks on the 7th rank, and we're gonna see that checkmate coming.
Well, as Richard showed yesterday against Fedoseev, he is a monster in these types of positions. Just like very practically tricky. He knows how to lay mines, and there comes his king. He's gonna go King G5 here. And then he's going to try to get his king to H4 and just snag that pawn on H3. Radislav, well, we see what he's doing. He's trying to get this pawn moving ASAP. King G5, Rook A2. Wait, Rook D5 check. Radislav has allowed Rook D5 check and then Rook E8 check. I don't like this at all. I don't like what he's just done.
Oh, it comes right away. Is there a way king can go on F1, King E2, F1, not to allow Black to have check at least?
Yeah, but then there's Rook D1 check. Then there's just Rook
D1. No, it's even worse.
And Ketty, if King F2, Rook D2 check, and then Rook E2, and Black
gets checkmate in one.
No, this is losing. Radislav lost his mind with this move. Rook A2 is a huge mistake. He forgot about this Rook D5 thing with the rooks moving in a ladder and then recombining on the 2nd rank with massive threats against White's king. I think this is losing. And 30 seconds on top of that, no, this is indefensible. Wow.
Yeah. And White is changed so much to piece Rook A2 because you don't have Rook D3, you don't have Rook on the 3rd rank to cover the king. And that's the position that we're going to have Rook E2 now.
They're following that line. Rook E2 is going to happen. That threatens checkmate in 1, which I think forces Radislav to move one of his pawns out of the way to get his king at least a square, but I think that creates more weaknesses.
F pawn, because if you push H4, King H5, and there is still this checks and checkmates on the board, so maybe F pawn should be pushed. But 30 seconds for this position. Yeah,
and by the way, Rook G1, there's C1 Queen, and Rook takes C1, Rook G2 is mate. No, this is losing. F4 check has been played, but maybe after King F3, White can hold on for dear life. Maybe after King F3, Radislav can miraculously survive this endgame. You know, this is not easy to win because remember that Black's rooks, as impressive as they look, are still somewhat tied down to the C2 pawn. Oh, and Radislav blundered mate. He went Rook B2, Rook D3 check.
No.
It's over. G5, FG, Rook E4, and goodbye. Rook takes H3. Just a total collapse in time, and time pressure got to him. You know, he got himself down to 30 seconds, and you just can't defend these types of positions. He had to go King F3 here to prevent this check on D3. Instead, Rook B2, Rook D3, and G5. What a move. And that ends the game. In the meantime, a draw in Wesley Dominguez. Yeah, Wesley went knight E2. They traded knights and just kind of moved back and forth, forcing a draw.
Daniel, what a tragic start for Wojtaszek and his fans here in this first round. At the moment we thought maybe it's okay, White can survive. We got here G5 on the board and the checkmate.
Absolutely.
Beautifully played by Richard Dropward. By very small, he just made it big, and he checkmated his opponent.
He did.
By him.
And we are going to go on a short break while the players prepare for the second game. Don't go anywhere. We are in for a wonderful second rapid game as Wojciech in a must-win situation with the Black Pieces. We love those. We will be right back at the FIDE Chess Grand Prix playoffs. Don't go anywhere.
We're back at FIDE Grand Prix 2022, first tie breaks. And Daniel, we're back to take a look once again at the first games, which just ended in a few minutes ago.
Yeah, Ketty, this was a very action-packed first rapid game. We had both games starting out very peacefully, actually. And one of those games continued in a peaceful direction and ended in a draw. The other game took a turn just when we thought that things were fizzling out. Now, in the Wesley Dominguez game, not much happened the entire game. It was a Queen's Gambit accepted. There was an early Queen trade as Wesley trying to finagle a small edge out of this very symmetrical endgame. But ultimately, he failed to stop Lenier from fianchettoing his bishop. He went e4. Lenier took the opportunity to fianchetto, get his rook into the game. And honestly, white is a tiny bit better because of black's tiny weaknesses on the queen side, but it was never anything tangible. And Wesley tried his best. He went b4, but knight d7. And, Wesley found nothing better than to trade rooks. Okay, they traded rooks like this, and this is obviously just a dead draw, and they made a draw very shortly thereafter. So.
Yeah, not too much of the fireworks compared to the other game. What we have had Wojtaszek and Robert. They started quite interesting opening as well. Not have seen this. I have not seen this opening very often, but Daniel says that he plays, and that's quite a tricky line here with black queen b6 and queen a6. What's happening?
Yeah,
here?
Queen b6, queen a6, and now b5. And the point is that if you trade on b5, black's light squared bishop gets a really nice square on b7, and then the rook comes out to c8. So knight d2 is correct here, and b takes e4 leads to a very unbalanced pawn structure. Report playing for a win right out of the gate, taking a lot of risks, as he always does, playing unpredictably and energetically. He goes d5, striking in the center. And maybe, the engine is indicating knight e3 is a slightly better move. After knight e5, you get a bunch of these trades. Now, rook a c8, very nice move, preparing c5, and essentially c5 cannot be stopped. So Radoslav accepting that, going rook fd1. And ultimately, this is the turning point in the game, Ketty, because Radoslav could and should have just taken on c5. And after, sorry, not rook takes c1, bishop takes b2, queen takes b2, rook takes c5, essentially one of the sides can offer a draw. This is totally symmetrical. But instead of this, I think he was still kind of trying to play for a win and clearly underestimated this move, queen f3. And this is when things started going downhill just a little bit.
Yeah, and that's the moment where Radoslav started to play this weird moves, bishop a1, and now he came up with the idea to trade the queens because he thought that it was the moment to get this position into the end game where he had more chances to fight for a draw.
Yeah, but rook d5, Richard making a series of very nice moves. Rook d5, preparing rook cd8. Radoslav comes up with a very cool idea, b4 and rook a3, and this should have given him the draw because he just collects all of the pawns, king f1, rook takes b2, and here he starts playing inaccurately. So apparently the move rook e2 was the most accurate. The point is rook b1, you go rook e1. Mm-hmm. Black has to move the rook back again. Now you play a4, and you do this, and here this is a dead draw because as soon as black takes a4, you take c2, right? Well, what if black doesn't take a4? Well, then you just push this pawn all the way to a7 and even a8. And at some point, the rook is going to have to take, and that's it. Rook takes c2, and the king from g2 can defend the remaining pawns. But instead of this, Radoslav playing a lot less accurately and going king e2 rather than rook e2. This gives Richard a chance to establish this position. He starts walking his king up, and right around this moment, Radoslav panics. f3, another inaccuracy, weakening the h-pawn. Rook c5, a4. This is still fine and defensible, but in this position, Ketty, Radoslav loses his mind. Rook a2, forgetting that the rook was playing a crucial role of being able to block the check. And Report reshuffles his rooks, and then Radoslav accelerates the defeat by blundering blundering checkmate with rook d3 and g5. Very poorly played endgame by Radoslav. I mean, no way around it. He's going to be kicking himself. He's in a must-win situation with black.
Yeah, and the way how he defends this endgame is a bit surprising for me and many of our viewers, because he could very simply go for rook e2 and attack c2, give up a pawn and to hold his position. But instead he went to the other way, and also the final phase he could find more. But you know what, Dania, he was really low on time, seconds on the clock, and this also could be the factor why he ended up being checkmated.
Yeah, and as incredibly strong, yeah, definitely time pressure played a big role, but as incredibly strong as Rapport is, if you have to play for a win against someone with the black pieces, Rapport is not a bad choice because he always plays uncompromising chess. I don't think Rapport is someone who can play sort of solidly for a draw. He's going to play his style, and Radoslav is probably going to get a chance to unbalance things, but he's going to have to step it up in the opening. And, the stars are going to have to align for him. And I'm very curious about Dominguez. So is Dominguez going to, go out all guns blazing, or is he going to play relatively peacefully? And are we going to see them transition to the blitz? We shall see. We shall see.
We shall see that very soon. The next games are coming up really, really soon. And definitely Richard Crawford is now in best situation of all the players. Even draw is enough for him to avoid any further tie breaks and get to out of this stage. But we all see all these actions right after a short break. So please don't go anywhere. We're coming back shortly. Welcome back, everyone. This is FIDE Grand Prix Tiebreaks Game 2, and we do have already the first moves on the board. Dania, which is the game you want to see first?
Let's start with a report game, and we had a Moscow variation, bishop b5 check. So Richard does indeed, I mean, this is his definition of a peaceful line. It's still pretty darn sharp. And then d4, Radoslav going knight d7, which is the sharpest, the most ambitious continuation, c4, knight f6, bishop g5. So this is kind of a Morozzi-bind structure where black has the two bishops, but white has this sort of very long-lasting clamp on the center. I think this is a great opening choice by Richard. Very solid and hard to crack. White has no weaknesses. You know, good stuff. This is going to be really hard to win for black on demand.
Yeah, a good choice of the opening. Do you think he has a second who advised this, or he chose that by himself and
it's not impossible.
His own?
Yeah, maybe somebody accompanied him to the tournament hall and sort of gave him a recommendation. Yeah, Radoslav is going to play the knight, or if that's his opening when he needs to play for a win. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, Richard could have taken that knight on f6 and damaged black's pawn structure, but he prefers to keep the bishop on the board, which is understandable. He's going to castle short. You know, we're going to see a lot of normal developing moves. I think Radoslav is likely to play bishop b7 here and maybe aim for the b5 pawn break once he has completed his development, but probably not yet. It's probably a little premature. Okay, there it is, bishop b7. Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see that. And oh, he goes e5 right away.
e5. No, he's still in his preparation, which is really scary. And e5 is a scary move if you need to play for a win with black. Takes. And lots of trades are almost inevitably going to happen here. I mean, okay, if black castles, white can castle, but white can also just play knight takes d7. And I don't see Rapport losing this position. This is just way too symmetrical and quiet. I mean, I think he's doing a phenomenal job here of funneling this game into the right direction. I stand corrected. I didn't think that Rapport would play this way, but he is. And, you know, he's doing an amazing job here.
He only needs draw to win the match in tiebreak. So why not to go it easy? And here we have his moves. Radoslav will take some time here. Shall we go to the other game? Dominguez with white pieces have been played. This position, it looks like Hikaru, Espiengo Hikaru, but we have a bit of change, right? The pawn of white is not pushed all the way to a5.
So this is an Italian. Yeah, black's pawn is actually on a5. And Hikaru, a5 was not common at some point. I mean, a6 is generally the more common placement for the pawn, but this move got popular pretty recently. Caruana. Hikaru has played a bishop e6. Now bishop b5, exploiting the drawback of the move a5, which is that it weakens this square. Bishop back to a7, knight bd2, knight e7. Both sides usually get their knight to g3. Knight f1, knight h5, knight f1, knight f4, and there's knight g3. So you can see that both sides are playing on the king side. I've always thought that white has a very pleasant position here, just because he's got control of the center. Yeah, the knight on f4 is quite nice looking, but how are you actually going to make something out of it? In the meantime, white can get the knight to f5, of course.
Yeah, we have seen Wesley's game against Dominguez. Was it against Dominguez when he gave up the center, then he gave up the dark square bishop, and he started really cool attack on the king side with queen g5, f5. And we thought it was his preparation. Let's see if he's bringing the same line here in this game.
Yeah, Dominguez traditionally a Rai Lopez player, but in this tournament has relied more on the Italian, which of course in many cases leads to very similar structures. So the openings are not dissimilar. My guess is that he wants to get this bishop back to c2 so that it protects the f5 square indirectly, and then perhaps put the knight on f5. But you can also put the knight on f5 immediately. So that would be my guess. He's probably deciding between going bishop c2 or playing knight f5 immediately, and Wesley stays flexible in the center. I mean, d5 is not out of the question. Yep, bishop c2. And so far, Lenya are playing both sides really playing very quickly.
They're playing very quickly, unlikely Radoslav Wojtaszek, who is still thinking after knight e5, and he's down to 12 minutes on the clock and in a very, very hard situation.
Indeed. Let's switch back. Yeah, he's thinking about life and about how to create any winning chances out of this position. You know, the move bishop c8 here, I was thinking is not out of the question, trying to just keep as many pieces on the board as possible. But the issue is, first of all, the endgame is probably not worse for white, but white can also drop the queen back to e3 and then hit black's queen with rook d1. I mean, this is, even though black has the two bishops, he's just so passive. Radoslav, queen c7, that was his choice. Okay.
Queen c7 is his choice, and but this really doesn't stop white to capture d7 bishop. And I know you might have king on e7. That's his idea, actually, to have endgame with king in the center.
Yeah, he wants to play queen takes d7, and that's a very smart choice, because if Richard just trades everything, white's going to be worse here. White's going to be worse here, and okay, this is happening.
But he took, instead of knight d7, he took with king d7, and he remains bishops on the board. Yeah,
I mean, okay, worse is probably a strong word. I would prefer to be black here, just because the king, well, it has a nice parking square on c6. Like if white castles, for example, it's always fun to castle with check, but it's, you know, one shouldn't overestimate its effect. King c6, and then black can go for b5, black can go for g5. You know, this is not a dead draw. This is an endgame that's full of life. So Richard trying to trade everything off here, but he's going to have to work for it.
We might say Wojtaszek fighting back in this match against Richard Ruppert. Shall we get back to the other game, which is also in progress? And we do have update here. Knight went on f5, and black played really quickly f6. Why that move was played f6?
First of all, it's pretty scary that Wesley is still playing instantly. He's got 45 more seconds than he started with. Why f6? Well, it just sort of, I think it's just a general one of those moves that solidifies black's position. It looks a little bit ugly, but on the other hand, it overprotects e5. So d takes e5 is well, not really a problem because of d5. And look at how nice black's kingside pawn structure is. And the other thing it does is it gives the bishop an escape square on f7. And f7 in general is now a square that black can use as a transit point for his pieces. So, you know, Wesley is basically asking Lenier how he's going to improve his position. And that's one of the problems in these positions is white has a hard time sustaining the pressure. Maybe bishop e3. And that to me seems like the most natural developing move. And then maybe it's time to strike with d5.
That's what came to my mind after f6, is he's going to attack in the center with d5.
Yeah, and the point of f6 is very clear now. The e5 pawn is now perfectly well defended, and d5 is unpleasant because you can never take on d5. You lose the knight. So,
and on the other hand, black wants to take d takes c4, attack the knight, and force white to take that pawn back, and then bishop takes f5 will be that threat.
Yeah, so d5 threatens d takes c4, and the issue is that if white drops the knight back from g3, that's out of the question in many positions because of this bishop takes h3 tactic, which leads to immediate checkmate, essentially. I mean, white has to give up a bunch of material to avoid getting mated. Yeah, bishop e3 has been played. And now I'm fully expecting the move d5 by Wesley.
Yeah, this game can be so complicated. Look at the center, all the 4 pawns in the center, knights, both pieces, both sides, knights are here. And what else you can ask here for us, for the commentators, for the viewers as well. But what do you think? How white feels here in this position? Is he still okay?
Probably not great after d5. You know, I think if anybody has to be careful, well, careful is perhaps overstating. I don't think white is worse. I think white has actually several ways to keep the balance. One move that came to my mind is Queen B1. And the point is that, the point is that D takes C4, Bishop takes C4, and the knight on F5 is protected now by the queen. Whereas if the queen was on D1, as you indicated, you would lose the knight on F5. So that's one option. And that's a very Lenyard type move. He likes these types of prophylactic moves. So, but first, Wesley has to play D5. And right now he's still thinking.
Wesley has time advantage on the clock, 14 minutes against 10 minutes, what we have right now on the clocks. So it also emphasizes that he's in his books and that's his home preparation.
Yeah, I think Bishop B3 may be the first move that put Wesley out of book. And he's just trying to figure out why that is. And that's one of the great byproducts of being so well prepared. You just know for a fact that when your opponent makes a move that's not in your file, it must be because it's not necessarily because the move is a big mistake, but it's probably because there's something very concrete. And I think that helps Wesley find the move D5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think can he consider to take on D4 first and then hit D5?
Yeah, that's a great idea. But I think the problem here is that White's going to recapture with the knight. If you could guarantee that White recaptures with a pawn, this would be a phenomenal version of this idea. But yeah, White takes with the knight, and then D5 kind of loses its effectiveness because of how well protected the knight on F5 is.
Oh my God, let's go back to the game of Richard Rapport and Wojciech. What's happening?
Knight D5, and an amazing idea spotted by Richard. And I think this idea might give him what he needs to draw the game. So rook E1, B5 played, rook E1, Wojciech going rook H to D8, and boom, knight D5. And it's not hard to see what the purpose of this is. If E takes D5, Richard recaptures the bishop on E7 with interest. No, this is bad. I mean, anything, it's good here. Just take the knight,
can take
and then take the pawn, and you're in phenomenal shape. And if you play knight takes D5, well, here you actually lose. C takes D5 check exposes the attack on Black's bishop, and that's it. King D7, DE.
And then E takes F, and you're anyway losing the piece. What a move, knight D5. And Wojciech actually has 10 minutes still on the clock, and he felt for this knight D5 out of
he missed
this
it.
move came.
It came completely out of the blue. You just don't see these moves in the endgame very often. Bishop C5, though, preserves equality. So that is actually, Wojciech can't panic here. He has to find that move. But now Rapport can start trading stuff. Knight takes F6. I don't know, rook takes D1, rook takes T1, GF6, bishop F6. Now Rapport's not losing this game. I think Radek's chances evaporate significantly after the move knight D5.
Yeah, he goes with bishop C5. Seems like he found the only move here, which keeps Black not losing not having the worst position. And now after taking on F6, White will dominate on open D file, and there is not much to worry here for White.
Yeah, it's still a game. You know, I've seen these end games can go either way. Yeah. Make no mistake, but you know, the way this game has been going so far, it seems like Rapport is just so confident. He's got almost all of his time remaining. Radoslav not in time pressure. That's not going to be a deciding factor anytime soon.
And I just started to think about yesterday's game, because this is what happens to chess players when they are missing their chances. Radoslav had such a chance to win the group, but instead he played so passive. He didn't use his chances that he had many times. And the game ended in a draw, and that gave Richard Rapport the chance to catch him and to qualify from the group.
Yeah, I can guarantee you it was a sleepless night for Radoslav, who just played a phenomenal opening against Opar, and he was just really, I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that he was crushing out of the opening. And Oparin had like 4 minutes for something absurd, like 15 moves. But that's life. And Oparin defended brilliantly, really brilliantly with his last seconds, and forces Wojciech into this tiebreaker.
Yes, and Wojtaszek had really nice tournament. He won one game and made 5 draws. But out of these 5 draws, Daniel, let's be honest, he could at least score 2 more points.
Yeah, no, he left a lot of points on the table in the preliminary stage, and he's paying the price for it right now. He's down a point, his back is against the wall, and a couple of accurate moves. If report finds, this game is very, very likely to end peacefully, and that would mean for those just joining, report wins the first game here with black, and all he needs is a draw to qualify. Okay, let's see what Wesley has chosen. He's not chosen anything. He's still thinking. Yeah. He's now down to 9 minutes. This is a big moment. I mean, he senses how critical this moment is. This game could go, I could see this game going every which way. It could end in some sort of a draw. It could, there could be mass trades in the center, but I could also see either side taking over the initiative. This is very exciting.
It is very exciting. He spent about 5 minutes in this, 4 or 5 minutes for this game. So something huge is coming now. I assume either he's pushing d5 pawn, or is he planning to take on f5, then knight e7 to attack that pawn and try to win? Is there a possibility?
Well, there is, and yeah, he better come up with a Nobel Prize-winning idea here. I think tactically, though, this fails because of d takes e5. And the problem is f takes e5, knight takes e5, and the queen is x-rayed, and so you can't take the knight. So unfortunately, this concrete approach fails, but it has to be calculated for sure. Now, what's a move in Wesley's style? Wesley type of move is to play king h8 here and just say, all right, Lenier, show me what you got. Show me how you're going to keep improving. But I think Lenier can play queen d2 here, and then rook d1. White has, now that White has played.
Sorry.
Guess who's played Wesley a bunch of times? Guess which commentator has played Wesley a bunch the last few years? Okay, I'm giving myself a pat on the back.
You know him too well. He played rook king h8. Just you suggested here that he would play. That's a nice one.
But the issue that I have with this move is, well, Lenier can play queen d2 and then rook d1. White's got several pretty easy ways to improve his position. So, wow, the engine is indicating an interesting idea to go knight back to d5 here, which actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because you want to get to the bishop. And if he takes d5, then black is able to take the knight. I would not put it past Wesley to see that idea. In fact, I'm going to make the prediction that this might very well occur on the board. If Lenier plays queen d2, that means he's missed knight d5.
Tanya, I have to admit something. Like earlier, I was telling to my Twitch channel that after seeing your video imitating chess players, I said, like, if Dania imitates Wesley So at the commentary, I will just pass away. I will just knock out.
You lose it.
That's the best thing I have ever seen. And yeah, please don't do it to me. Please do that to me at the commentary live, because I'm losing it.
Now that you said it, though, you made a mistake. You made a mistake in reminding me of it. Let's get to the other game real fast. And see how Richard is doing. No, he's still, Radoslav actually is doing a pretty good job here creating some chances, but it just seems to me that too many pawns are getting traded. And once the B pawn is traded here, I mean, all of the pawns are on one side of the board, and I just don't see this happening for him.
I love how Richard here keeps the double pawns for black on the board, and he did not take that f6 pawn. Instead, he remains that weakness for black, and he also remains his very healthy pawn on f2.
Yeah, a4, f5, a takes b5, king takes b5. The engine actually thinks black is slightly better here because of the superior piece activity. Yeah, I mean, rook is good. Bishop will drop back to d6 maybe to start massaging White's kingside pawns. And White's bishop is a little bit awkward. It's not a bad bishop per se. It can get back into the game pretty easily, but at the moment, it's not doing all that much. So I think Richard has to be just a little bit careful here. Maybe rook e2. I think rook e2 is probably the smartest way to handle this position.
Yes, White created a pass pawn on the queen side, but this pass pawn is not a power now, as Black's active pieces are all of them on the queen side, and that's not very visible. But there's still the question is how Black is going to find any weakness here in White's position.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing it. I think, yeah, again, the computer gives this 0.3, 0.4 in Black's favor, largely because of the piece activity. And Black's pawn structure is not bad. All of these pawns are defending each other, and the H pawn is essentially impossible to attack. It can always move to H5 onto a light square. Whereas, and also the king, Black's king is slightly more active, and at some point it can jump to C4 or to B4, but not right now. I mean, it wouldn't really be doing anything on C4.
Yeah, Dania, this is the positions where Wojtaszek feels really comfortable to have very, very, very small advantage, and then he can press. Let's see how the game gonna end. And here he only needs one result, and that's the victory with Black pieces. Shall we go back to the game of Dominguez and Circus? We could have so much fun here with knight on F5 and on G5.
I love what Lenier did here. He takes on E5. So he is the first to release the tension, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And actually, Wesley playing F takes C5, generally, I think the reason he didn't take with a D pawn is because in this endgame, White gets control of the D file really quickly. And this is just really unpleasant. So Wesley taking with the F pawn, but now in comes the knight. Lenier exploiting the drawback of Black's last move. And this King H8 move that Wesley played might have been a little bit too slow. Now the D pawn is hanging, and the bishop on E6 is under fire. This is a little bit iffy.
May I ask why White did not capture D6 pawn instead of knight G5?
Yeah,
that one was hanging.
If queen D6, there's bishop F5, sort of a typical motif, and Black wins a piece. And I think if knight D6, there's this move bishop takes H3 I had mentioned earlier. And once again, it's incredibly strong because if you take, then you just get checkmated here. So it was a nice tactical eye by Wesley to realize that, but obviously Lenier is not fooled. And if you drop the bishop back to G8, now probably White can take on D6. Now White can take on D6. So Black is going to have to part ways with this bishop one way or the other. It's unpleasant. And now Wesley all of a sudden down to 6 minutes. I mean, he was Mr. Cool with, almost 16 minutes after over a dozen moves, but now he's dropped all the way down.
He was the one who had the time advantage, and he spent most of the time on that move, which you just say like, he will go here, King H1. Thank you so much. He went for King H8 over there, and all this madness started right after that move, King H8.
And D5, Wesley sensing the urgency, saying, I don't have any time to procrastinate, pushes in the center. Okay, it looks like he has a little bit more time than we initially thought, but still. Now, what does Lenier do? Does he take the bishop and then go? Well, if he takes the bishop, then after queen takes C6, and knight on F5 is also a little bit loose. And White can't fall asleep in this position because Black is starting to get his pieces into the game. Anybody's game here. All three results are like equally likely here, I think.
Very, very interesting position. Quite sharp. All the pieces still in the board. Shall we very quickly go to the other game, as we do have some changes there as White pushes pawn forward on G4.
Yeah, good move by Richard to play F3 and stop Radoslav's pawns from progressing any further. Bishop G1 attacking H2, and Richard trying to trade off even more pawns with the move G4. And the point is that if Radoslav declines the trade, then I think, bishop F6, there's bishop E3. No, this is bad. But I guess if White stays on this diagonal, then, for example, H3, then bishop E3 can always be met with the move bishop F2, offering a bishop trade and essentially forcing a draw. And this is happening.
Yeah. We do have
bishop
this position.
f2. Ooh.
Wait, I can take on h2 because
You can. No, I think you should. I think the idea is actually bishop e1, bishop g1, bishop back to f2. Maybe. Or maybe not. No, bishop c3.
And he just gave that pawn just like that? Voluntarily?
No, I think it's bishop e1, bishop g1, bishop c3. And then after f6, the rook goes from e1 to h1. If this is actually his idea, this would be pretty brilliant. That's not an easy idea to spot as quickly as he did in the endgame. Because after rook h1, the h-pawn cannot be defended.
But Daniel, is not there any chance to break through with e4 and start to push f1? Yeah, bishop e3.
Yeah, I mean, you can try rook h1. Well, another issue is that e4, I take it, and your rook is hanging, so you're going to have to waste another tempo.
Yeah.
And by the time you get your rook out of the way, I feel like white's already going to take on h6. And if you try e4 now, I mean, you're going to get yourself a passer, but it's going to be fully restrained by white's pieces, and white's going to have a bunch of his. I mean, e5 at a minimum is just good. So, an ultimatum posed to Radislav. Which piece does he take? The pawn on h2 or the bishop on f2? Does he try his hand at the rook endgame? I don't think either is particularly appealing.
Yeah, he captured this, and we can see what Rupert here planned. And in the other game, I do have a question. Is shall we actually switch in there? And is there a g3 move? Because knight is trapped on f4.
Ooh, wait a minute. G3, that does trap the knight. Oh, black has DE, which is a very important counter resource. Now the knight has lost its support. And, okay, I guess takes d7, knight can swing to d6. Now, obviously, the knight has choices. You can take on h3, for instance. Takes, bishop takes c4. No, this is not the most pleasant endgame for black. Again, the knight on g6 is fully restricted. And although black is currently up a pawn, this has slight Dominguez Shurov vibes from yesterday. I mean, a lot of stuff is hanging here. Pawn on b7, pawn on e5 is weak.
So interesting position. Instead of this here, Dominguez went for the trade, and he took the bishop. And now queen gets on e6. Oh, what is happening in the other game? Here, Richard Rupert just decided to go in the bishop endgame.
Oh my goodness, that is very committal. There's rook d2, forcing the rook trade. Takes, bishop g3, Radislav obviously wanting to trade bishops. A reporter is not going to do that. He's just going to move his bishop somewhere. No, I think it's a fortress. I just think it's a draw. King c4. Like, the point is, like, what if Report does absolutely nothing? Like, if he just keeps his bishop on this diagonal and he meets king d5 with king d3. It's close. He's cutting it pretty close, but yeah, maybe black can break through at some point, but white's king is too close to the f-pawn for black to have any realistic chances of doing that. So I think this is a draw.
Can black try to break through with f5 to have the pass pawn on h-file?
Yeah, you can try doing that. And the point is, maybe you can try putting the king on d5 and then playing h5.
Yeah, to be closer, yeah.
Sorry, f5, gf, h5. So that if white pushes his pawn, black can stop it. It's definitely a draw. And white's king is also close enough to where the h-pawn shouldn't really be a big danger. The king can stop it from g2. But Richard, I would take a lot of time if I were him. I would be very careful here not to let this get out of control, because this is a little bit sketchy for white.
So interesting decision here by Rupert to thoughts to go to the bishop endgame. Very interesting endgame, but we have to get back to the game of Dominguez and Wesley So, because here any result can happen, as you mentioned earlier, Danny.
Indeed, although I think Lenier is starting to take over the initiative. He take on a7, rook a7, queen g4, and Wesley sidestepping it with queen f6. I don't know if I would resist the urge to play g3 here and kick the knight out of f4. Knight e6, and now maybe maybe h4. Just expand on the king side. I feel like this is a linear type of idea. He goes rook a d1 first. He does resist the urge to play g3.
He wants the same. He wants to play g3 and then to take pawn on g5 because it will be hanging.
He's got, does he have 3 minutes? Is that what it says?
Less than 3 minutes. That's what we see right now.
Dang. And Wesley in a little bit of trouble here. Maybe not even a little bit. The eval bar doesn't seem to be overly concerned, but I am, because white is threatening g3, and after the knight moves, you lose the pawn on d5. And if you lose a pawn like that, your whole position starts to crumble. So rook d8 comes to mind, but now I can start pushing the h pawn, and you can see how unpleasant this can become. Black's resources are incredibly strained here. Everything is on the verge of just falling apart in the center. This is right up Lenier's alley, this type of position.
Right. What about to give up this center, like take the pawn in the center, d takes c4, bishop take e4, and rook 7 to a8. Just to, this rook on a7 looks so bad. You need to bring it.
Yeah, you really do. That rook is terrible. It's not doing anything. I mean, it's just, but white is basically playing up a rook right now. Yeah, this is possible. I mean, maybe this is one of the lesser evils, but it looks pretty darn evil nonetheless. White looks very unpleasant.
Decided g3 h4 is so strong. You just squeeze in black's position, kick the knight back, and get more space advantage on the king side.
Yeah, I don't really know what to do here with black. It's just hard to propose a good move. I mean, the engine likes b5 with the idea of getting this rook into the game. That's quite a creative idea. But I don't really see what to do after. Oh, g3 h5. Oh, my goodness. And all these concrete ideas, but they're so hard to spot in what is essentially now a blitz game.
Yeah, it's h5 is the engine move, but I'm sure Wesley can spot that one. Looks very tempting. Well,
he sees h5, I'm sure, but not immediately. I mean, if you play it immediately, you just create more weaknesses for yourself. So it's important to it's important to keep h5. It's important to keep h5 for when white plays g3, because of the h3 pawn becoming a weakness, right? Rather than playing it immediately.
Yeah, and then that goes on g5 with all the threads taking on e4 too. So that's very likely what.
He's played it immediately.
Wesley's.
He has played it immediately.
He couldn't wait longer. He couldn't wait longer. Nice.
All right, let's go. But you know why I was so concerned about doing it immediately? Because now white is actually threatening the move g3. Now you might say, well, what about the h3 pawn? Well, that's exactly the thing. Let's just make a random move for black. g3, knight h3, king h2, king g2. I don't know where white should go, but this is a super unpleasant situation because now h5 is hanging. And if you go back to g5, it with a check. And well, this looks very scary. I mean, if you ever
take
move
the knight on
away,
g6? Knight g6,
yeah, you can.
Then,
but
it's,
rook takes f2 in the end. Rook takes f2 in the end. But maybe for
that's
that
why
reason,
we had to play king g2.
Exactly. Maybe for that reason.
Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Katie. Queen takes g6 is winning here. Look at this line. Knight e7, then you take, and then e takes d5 with a discovery, and everything collapses. Okay, but queen f3. No, Wesley going queen g5. He doesn't allow g3. Now Lenier has the move h4. Takes, and now simply e takes d5, and then the e5 pawn hangs at the end of the line. And here black is just on the verge of crumbling entirely. But will Lenier see the move h4 in this position? I feel like he might play queen g3 or king h2, which is a slightly more human move.
Yeah, it looks more human move. But you know what they are playing? They are very engine-like moves, and I'm starting to think that we have sort of like mixed moves here, because these players are pretty capable to find engine-only moves.
They're only partly human. Let's quickly check into our other game, which is going to end in a draw, I believe. Report has found a very watertight defensive construction. He has set up a fortress, and I agree with you, Ketty. I think Black should try one of the pawn breaks, maybe f5, maybe e4, and f3 check. But none of this is actually dangerous given how close White's king is, and also given the fact that White is a passer of his own. And, the moment the Black plays king d3, the pawn starts getting pushed. No, this is a draw. This is a draw. And I think that, after a couple of attempts, Radislav is going to admit defeat in the match. He goes c4. Yeah.
It's there. E4 is there. He's losing his last chances to fight back in the match, but so few pieces on the board. It's not a hard task for Richard to hold it.
And Robert would point out that the h1 square is the wrong color. So after f takes e4, all White needs to do is take the two f pawns, and he can give his bishop up for one of them, which is not the hardest thing to do. No, this is a dead draw.
I think Daniel, you also miss Robert, as you said. Robert plays here. It was not only me. It was not only me.
No, absolutely not. So this is a draw. Let's go back to the other games more interesting. Queen g3, queen f6, king h2. Yeah, Lanier going for the slower approach. And now back to f3 comes the queen. And now if Wesley goes back to g5, no. White's already going to go g3. That was the point of putting the king on h2. Knight h4 by Wesley. Good move. Yeah, takes. But now he takes d5. Now he takes d5. And the e5 pawn, once again, is hanging in the end.
If it takes d4, is there a move like knight g2?
Knight g2.
Because if you take, I take the pawn on f2, and I'll try to win a queen.
Oh, there's queen d3. Oh, that is a very important detail, without which you would be absolutely right, Ketty. If you take on g2, you get pinned, and Lenier has to see that in order to play e takes d5. If he misses that, he's a lot likelier to play queen g3, which is a lot less dangerous for Black. If he goes queen g3 here, then after queen f6, the worst is behind him. But no, there it is. E takes d5. He finds it. Oh my goodness. Here we go. I think Wesley might have to play knight takes d5, and then he's just much worse. There's no getting around it. No, he's played it. Knight g2, queen d3, e4. Rook takes e4, and he wants to go back to f4. He wants to go back to f4 with his knight.
That's scary. This is so scary position. This is so scary position. And he claims that knight f4 saves me, because if you take the rook f4, queen f4 is a check, and I do have time to get rid of the checkmate threat.
Yeah, I guess the problem for Black is that after rook takes e4, knight f4, White should just play queen e3. And if c takes d5, there's the brilliant rook takes d5. Rook takes c4, queen f2 played. But now king h1 is apparently winning for White. Just king h1. That's all he has to do, is get the king out of the pin, and then the battery is going to be decisive. Here he goes.
King h1 is on the board.
And rook e2, Ketty, rook e2, look at this threat. Rook e2 just skewers everything and threatens mate. No, Black, it's over. It's totally losing. Wesley cannot do anything. If he moves his knight back, just rook takes f4, and there's mate on h7. If Lenier doesn't do something crazy, he is going to win this game. It is completely winning. Wesley has lost the thread of the game here, and what amazing calculation by Lenier just to realize that you can drop the king back. It's in amongst the trees, and the king on h1 is as safe as they come.
I've never seen a player played so complicated position with a so short of time.
I know.
And so crazy. Accurate.
It's crazy.
He has 30 seconds on the clock, and he goes this accurate in his crazy and sharp line.
And welcome to Lenier's world. His Italian is unreal. The way that he possesses knowledge of these ideas, the way that he maneuvered around Wesley's knight on f4, the way that he combined prophylaxis with, realizing when to press on the gas pedal. This is one of the best rapid games that I've ever seen. In terms of quality, 30 moves. I mean, he made Wesley, not look like an amateur, but look like someone who's not very experienced in Italian positions. And Wesley is anything but inexperienced. There might be resignation in this position. There is not a single way that black can save the knight on g2.
If black goes g6 here to cut this diagonal, then rook e2 drops the knight. And if you play knight back, then rook just can take that knight.
And if you play rook f3, there's rook e8 check, very important resource. And then, of course, queen h7 is checkmate. Wesley down his last seconds. No, knight h4, but now just rook takes h4, and it is over. g6, rook takes h5. There's mate in 2. He plays it. Yeah. Boom. He didn't hesitate at all. And resignation. Dominguez qualifies. What an incredible game. And in the other game, it's also a draw. Both matches are over. We're not going to blitz today. Wow. Not
today, but what the tiebreakers we had today. I really didn't need a coffee to wake up because these games were such a cold shower. It ended quite soon, but I'm really happy to see this quality of chess what we had today.
Me too. This was amazing. And the Wojciech report game, the round one game was great too. Everybody playing uncompromising chess today, but ultimately to me, the hero is Leonard Dominguez. I mean, beating Wesley like this in a rapid playoff is a monumental feat. And Leonard is one of my favorite players. He deserves it. And he wins his last 2 games in the regular section, and then beats Wesley in the playoffs. That's just absolutely incredible. Report and Wesley So. Wow. Just amazing.
Yeah, they will join Hikaru Nakamura and Levon Aronian to the way of fighting the most of the Grand Prix points at this Grand Prix 2022 first leg. But now it's time to take the short break, very short break, because we're coming back to you and we're picking one of our favorite game, and we're going to analyze that game more deeply. So please don't go anywhere.
The Chess.com Rapid Chess Championship is a brand new world-class online rapid event series for the top 100 players, top 10 women, and top 10 juniors in the world. Watch as the very best compete for their share of $20,000 each week, culminating with a $150,000 prize finals in August. It all gets going at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on the weekend of Saturday, February 12th, right here on chess.com. But Ketty, this was an amazing day of action. The preliminary group stage tiebreaker with 2 matches, both concluding in the rapid stage. Whew. That was
definitely was. It definitely was. But Dania, now it's time to choose the best game for today, and which is that?
Indeed. And it is time for our rapid recap for the tiebreaker and the game that we are choosing. There's no question about it. Dominguez against So. This was an epic game. At this point in the match, they were tied. Dominguez easily holding the first game with the black pieces, and of course, feeling pretty ambitious with white. So let's see how it all happened. Now, this started off as a mainstream Italian. Dominguez this tournament has been refraining from playing the Rai Lopez, instead has gone for the Italian. And the line that they play is this newish line with A5, which has been popularized by Fabi and Hikaru. Black prevents B4. The downside of that move is that it weakens the B5 square. And after a couple more normal moves, bishop B6, there is this move, bishop B5. Ketty, that's a pretty unpleasant move. And I'm a little bit skeptical about Black's position in general in this line.
Yeah, I hear Black went a bishop from C5 to A7, and he kind of continued what he has planned and what he has prepared. And we thought that he's spending no time on the clock. He knows what he's doing. He's well prepared, as he has been played this line earlier to also brought this knight from H5 to F4. But Dominguez was quite okay with everything, as he also decided to bring the knights all the way to G3 and then F5.
Yeah, and in order to prepare knight F5, Dominguez first drops the bishop back to C2 in order to cover that square. And after queen D7, knight F5, Wesley going F6, solidifying the pawn on E5. At this point, Wesley was still playing instantly. Bishop E3 is the move that gave him pause, probably not in his file or couldn't remember it. And here we thought that the clearest pathway to a complicated but probably dynamically balanced position was the immediate D5. This strikes at the center. The point is that white can't take on D5 because the knight hangs, and it's just a very complicated position. We were thinking about queen B1 here, and the engine evaluates this as approximately equal. But instead, Wesley deciding on a general improving move, king H8. And it's probably, in retrospect, it turns out that this is quite a serious inaccuracy. It is too slow, and it gives Lenier a chance to transform the pawn structure to his favor. Get a D takes E5. Now, D takes E5 leads to a pretty unpleasant endgame, takes, and for instance, rook D1. But F takes E5 allows Lenier's knight to jump into the game with knight G5.
Yeah, after knight G5 here, Wesley decided that it was time to play very active and complicated position, as white's pieces are controlling all the board, and he went D5. And after D5, here Dominguez captured the bishop on E6, Wesley captured it back, and bishop takes bishop over there, pushes queen now on the king side, and we have a beautiful play by Dominguez here after queen G4, as he's threatening G3, H4, H5 to get more space advantage on the king side. And he's not also forgetting that he can bring the rook from A1 to D1 to hit the center, just in any case.
Yeah, he's gotten massive pressure on both sides of the board. And although the knight on F4 looks nice, it's constantly falling victim to this G3 idea. So Wesley's position already very unpleasant. There was this move B5 we thought might have been the best in order to get this rook into the game as quickly as possible, but a very difficult move to see. Instead, Wesley's starting to panic. He goes queen F6, and Lenier patiently gets his rook into the game, and now H5. Quite possibly the decisive mistake. The point is that Black should wait for white to go G3 and then go H5, because at least there the H3 pawn is a little bit weak. As it stands, after H5, queen F3, queen G5, this is just a one-move threat. Lanyard parries it with queen g3. You can't really trade queens here because at the end of the line, you're going to lose all of your center pawns. So Wesley dropping his queen back, king h2, another very patient improving move, rook a8, queen f3. And now Ketty, g3 is a huge threat. So Wesley feels like he has to take immediate action and he goes knight h4. But this doesn't end up helping.
He goes for knight h4, and you know what? After knight takes the knight, queen takes the knight, and there's no g3, and there's not a fork as h3 pawn hangs with a check. Instead, he went e takes d5, and the idea of e takes d5 is just to open up the bishop on the long diagonal, and sometimes just to get this queen on e4 on d3 and thread a checkmate. But let's be honest, it's not easy to make such a move, e takes d5, when there is still a pin on f5, and that's where White's strongest piece is located still.
Yeah, it really isn't easy, and it's not easy because Wesley has a tactic here that he played, which looks very, very strong. Now, his last chance to stay in the game was knight takes d5, and after queen d3, yeah, he's in very, very bad shape. Lanyard can actually grab this pawn on e5 because queen f4 check can be parried with queen g3. But Wesley going for one final attempt. Knight takes g2 looks like a very powerful move because you can't take the knight, you get pinned. But Lanyard had seen this and he goes queen d3, cold-blooded, threatening checkmate. Wesley intercepts this with e4, rook takes e4, queen takes f2. Now the move of the game. A lot of people would panic here, but not Lanyard. He just goes king h1, just gets out of the pin, and the game is immediately over because he's threatening rook back to e2. There's going to be a mate threat on h7, and there's nothing the black can do about it. Absolutely nothing. Rook f3 allows rook e8 check. g6 allows rook e2, and rook takes g2. Wesley ends up going knight h4, but of course, Lanyard picks it up. g6, and now the final flourish. Rook takes h5, check. This leads to mate on the next move. G takes h5, queen h7, and if the king moves aside, then the queen captures on g6 with mate. What a phenomenal, phenomenal game, Ketty, to win this match.
This is the clearest win I have ever seen in the rapid game by Dominguez. He just made it perfect to start the game and end in this with a very clear calculation.
Indeed, and that was your FIDE Grand Prix Rapid Tiebreak Daily Recap. Excellent job by Dominguez. Now we look at the results here. Richard Report and Lanyard Dominguez advance against Wesley So, against Wojciech and Wesley So, respectively. Two wonderful rapid matches, and they will move on and join two other players in the next stage in the semifinals. And the semifinals, Ketty, will start tomorrow. And we have, I will be doing the RCC with Robert, but you'll have a pretty weak co-commentator.
Yeah, I don't complain. I don't complain. Tomorrow at the Grand Prix, we're going to have Vishy Anand joining me. And we are going to do the commentaries together for 2 rounds in a row. That's very exciting. I'm sure a lot of our viewers would love to see Vishy commentating at this event. And also they are going to take a look at the rapid tournament that Robert and Danny are going to commentate. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited for Vishy. I think you're going to have a great time. And I had a great time today. Once again, it's always a pleasure to commentate with you. This was a relatively short day, but it was a sweet day. It was a day full of action. And I hope that everybody enjoyed the game. So as always, we'd like to thank everybody joining on Twitch and on YouTube. Lots of people cheering on your favorite players. The next stage starts tomorrow. And Ketty, a big thank you to you as well. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Dania. It was a lot of fun. It was short but sweet, as you mentioned, and all of us has been enjoyed. Big thanks to our producer and the whole team who were working on this project. We're coming back tomorrow, same time, same place, but with a new commentator and a new time control. We're going back to classical chess. So see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks.
Welcome to the World Rapid Championships from Warsaw, Poland. We're about to get going. Magnus now forcing the king closer. Yeah, this is very, very tricky. for the Georgian player. No, and he blunders his rook.
Oh my gosh.
He blunders his rook. And Magnus wins the game. And that was a lesson in just pressure. Duda, he has 3 pawns more than his opponent. Duda has won 3 in a row. He's getting off to a fantastic start. Gunina and Kostenyuk, 2 players with a perfect score. They're going to be facing each other. Kostenyuk once again has turned it around. And for the first time in the game, Gunina is down on the clock. Gunina is going to have to resign what initially looked like an amazing game from her. Magnus still has the threat on the pawn. There's the threat of rook f2. Magnus was actually very clever in how he just avoided the trade. And Shiro has lost on time.
So we have 3 players in first place right now in the open section.
This round, it's Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen.
I think Magnus is going to wrap this up really quickly.
The king moves away from the check. Magnus maneuvering his knight to a superior position. And Alireza resigns the game. The number 1 and number 2 players in the world right now. And Magnus Carlsen coming out there victorious, needing a win here if he is to have a sole lead. Magnus just simply retreating the king 1 step back. There's no stopping him from getting a queen on the next move. He's gonna win it, and he's gonna take the lead in this tournament. Carlsen playing against the youngster from Uzbekistan.
Abdusatorov has beaten some really strong players in this tournament, and that makes me kind of optimistic about his chances against Magnus here.
And Magnus now is going to give up another pawn. Wow, look at this. For the second time, Magnus is giving up pawns in order to just get rid of them. There's a check coming in here from Abdusatorov, and Magnus resigns. Abdusatorov takes the lead after a win against the reigning champion. Carlsen will have the opportunity to strike back with the white pieces against Nepomniachtchi.
Magnus is probably regretting this knight cd5. Now he's definitely forced to be playing for the draw.
He's not going to be catching Jan Nepomniachtchi.
That was surely a very disappointing game with the white pieces.
It's the big matchup of this round. If Kostenyuk makes a draw with the black pieces, she will be crowned world champion.
I would have to give the edge to white in this position because of the permanent nature of black's king problems.
I agree that this is an advantage for white. What? It's over. Kostenyuk is the champion.
Yes, Kostenyuk, she had a wonderful tournament, a very convincing first place with 9 points.
Alexandra Kostenyuk, the new women's rapid world champion.
Nakamura facing off against Carlsen. We've been waiting for this pairing, and it couldn't have happened at a better time when everything is on the line.
Magnus moved his rook and no longer is trapping that king on the edge of the board.
Yeah, I mean, rook a5 is a pretty good move, but also king g2, as you said.
And Magnus gives it up. It's a draw, and the rules of the event stipulate that only the 2 players with the best tiebreak score will be allowed to play the playoff. Third place, then, the bronze medal for Carlsen. It is Abdusatorov getting ready for the game. He will be facing Jan Nepomniachtchi of Russia. And Black's king doesn't manage to get back to defend the pawn. So Jan Nepomniachtchi is steering this game towards a draw. And that means Norderbeck is going to have the match ball with the white pieces in the next one. Nepomniachtchi getting rid of that last black pawn. Norderbeck getting rid of the white pawns. The guys shake hands. The white king is trying to run away from the checks. The rook just keeps checking in on that white king. Can the king get away? Both players are down to just 10 seconds on the clock. The king is finding shelter on the side of the board. Now he's returning to that checkmating idea that Irina identified earlier on. And now here comes the new queen.
Yes,
the new queen comes in, and then he's going in for the checkmate. Nepomniachtchi will have to, and he resigns. Norderbeck, Abdusatorov is the new rapid world champion.
Wow, this is an amazing turn of events. I mean, what a special moment that we're witnessing.
the world rapid champion Nordirbek Abdusaturov. That is going to be a name to remember for the future. Only 17 years old and already a world champion.